Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brothers and sisters and viewers of Zikra TV. Welcome back to the second part, or the third part today because of the Maghrib Azan in between, to this program, Real Talk. I'm your host, Iqbal Bana. As I say to you every day, we come to your homes day in, day out, trying to bring to you issues of interest or concern, and all the time trying to make sure that we raise awareness of some of the more important day-to-day issues that affect our community, not just the Muslim community, but the wider community as well. Today we've been talking about the issues, the conflict that emerged in Leicester. As I said at the very top of the program, the Leicester community, both Hindu, Muslim, Sikhs, and other faith communities, or people of no faith, have lived side by side for decades in harmony and peace and tranquility. Not only lived together, but they have been looking out for each other, supporting each other all over many, many years. And in the midst of all that was our guest, Sulaiman Bhai Naqvi, who has been very, very active in interfaith work in Leicester for those over 30 decades. Sulaiman Bhai is a fellow Malawian. He was born there, like I was, and then, unfortunately, we lost him. He moved to Zimbabwe, but then he made the sensible decision of coming back to this country as well. So, Sulaiman Bhai, welcome back again. I know we talked about how it started, who was sort of behind it, and the influence from outside, that there's a new emerging community that has come into Leicester over the last few years, and they have a different lifestyle and different understanding of living close with other communities as well. But can I just come back? I mean, obviously this unfortunate incidents took place. People from outside came in and they fomented this hatred. And do you think it was a deliberate attempt by a small number of people to try and incite Hindu-Muslim hatred, as we have seen and witnessed in India? Do you think that was one of the intentions of these people?
Well, we know from experience that the global does impact on the local. So people that come from different parts of the world, they carry with them through their life journeys, the difficulties and the stories that they pick up from other parts of the world. So of course, that in itself would have had an impact on what happened in Leicester. Now, to say that that was the only reason, that's dependent on the inquiry itself. But certainly from the Muslim community, there is a very strong feeling that this could be imported from abroad into the politics of this country, and it has no place in this city itself. From the Hindu community, the feeling is somewhat slightly different. Now, the difficulty here, well, is that what's happened over many, many years, you no doubt understand that the world's spotlight has been upon the Muslim community in relation to whatever happens in the world, especially on the war on terror for the last 20 odd years. And at every stage, whenever an attack has been linked to a person of our faith, we have always, without reservation, condemned it and said it's unacceptable behavior. So the difficulty we have is people are asking this question, people within our community, that why is it that we very quickly condemn issues and attacks by and for and against the Muslim community very quickly, and no other community does so. Now, my answer normally is that because social justice underpins and our faith teaches us that we speak out for what's right and what's wrong. The other difficulties we have is that the community, or from the Hindu community, there has been possibly not condemnation per se, and that could be for a number of reasons. And I'm not making excuses. One of the reasons could quite possibly be that there is a disagreement among them as to the causes of the problem. The second issue that they normally raise with me is they do not have a unifying body, one that takes care of all of this. For example, the Federation of Muslim Organization that I'm the PR officer for has been around for some 38, 39 years now. So we have a federal body, but there's no similar body for the Hindu community. And therefore, you can't have one unified voice to speak for all of them. This particular
But I mean, your situation is unique that you have this Federation of Muslim Organizations in Leicester. Unfortunately, not every town has that. I wish they did. I wish they did. I mean, Bradford is blessed. Bradford got the Council of Mosque, which is a very active organization like yours, and they have a very good team that works behind it. So you have this situation, but obviously we've seen through social media that 180 Hindu organizations have written to the government basically to say that they are now victims of Muslim hatred as far as they are concerned. Now, that is something that is a real concern to me, having worked at the center of government for many, many years as an advisor, that we know that is not the fact. But how do we overcome this misinformation that is being now perpetrated around the political agenda?
Well, it's always a case with every community that we move towards a victimhood mentality. The Muslim community has been victims for many, many years. As you know,
Oh yes,
Islamophobia
yes,
is
yes,
rife,
exactly.
and we have suffered more. So for us to be told that this is speaking of a particular community is not something that quite makes sense to us as a Muslim community, because we know that we've been on the receiving end for so many years and by successive governments that have been in power, and it's never been addressed. So the Muslim community themselves, and we have the national body, the Muslim Council of Britain, that is looking into that letter and trying to give a counter narrative of what's happened. But what happens with this situation is every community will give a narrative based on their understanding and how they see through their own particular lens. And we see through our lens, they see through their lens. This is why I say an inquiry is important. We're not talking about a long inquiry. We're talking about a few months to establish facts, to see where the problems were. But very often we look at the fruits and the branches of a tree, but very rarely do we go to the roots of the problem. So we need to find out what are the roots of the problem. Why has this happened after some 50 years that we've had this difficulty? I mean, when we first came in the 70s in this country, members of the Hindu, Sikh, Muslim community, the Indian community, and the other communities joined hands together against a very extreme far-right agenda that was at play. You know, the British National Party was in power.
I agree.
And we worked together to avoid this kind of, so the 70s was normally spent in issues of race relations. And we fought those battles together. Now it's sad that we've reached 2022 and now we're having battles from between ourselves. So though we can blame each other and chalk it up on the board, what I am more interested in is how do we move forward and find resolutions and let the healing begin, especially when young people go out in the street, and from either side, it doesn't really matter. A young person may get taken in by groups of people, may get a criminal record, and as a result, would have a problem in relation to the whole career path being spoiled, etc. So I think the elders in the community need to tell them of this particular danger that exists out there. We can understand that there's a disjointment, they have a legitimate reason, and they feel they've got no way to speak and no one to speak to, but still we have to try and bring some sort of calmness, because after all, as a body, we are accountable. Individuals can say what they want, send anything on social media. There's no accountability. But as an organization, we have to be that bit more careful what we say, because there's an issue of accountability.
That I totally accept and understand. But how will the inquiry determine whether some of these incidents were triggered by outside external influences? I mean, that's going to be very difficult to do unless they scrutinize the social media itself and sort of go through the social media records, because on WhatsApp, etc., people may have triggered these incidents, these events, collectively work together to try and bring people from outside to engender this hatred between the Hindu and the Muslim community.
Well, there's no denial by any of the agencies that people from outside had attended the city. In fact, the police had set up certain checkpoints coming off the motorway, and in some cases where they could identify the individuals, they were sent back to the city where they came from. So there is no denial that there was an outside influence. The whole debate here is what triggered it. That wasn't not the outside influence in the sense of people coming from other cities, and then that added to the problem. So the inquiry will first say, what triggered it, what was the problem, what was the underlying conditions, and then how did we deal with it. And people coming from other cities in the UK did not help the situation. But that's not the starting point. That is somewhere in the middle or towards the end of the actual disturbances.
Can I just ask, I mean, we've heard that a number of people have been arrested, and we heard that some
That's
young
right.
Muslim men were
Yes.
arrested as well, and they were defending their community basically from outside external attacks. And we're not sure whether any other people have been arrested or not, people who came from outside or people within the city itself have been arrested or not. So can you just throw some light on that?
Right, right. So members of both the Muslim and the Hindu community have been arrested. Local residents have been arrested, and somebody who comes from outside the city has also been arrested. So there's a combination. Now, we have to be very mindful what we say, because if there is a future case that might come through
there's
at some
sub judice,
point,
there's sub judice.
then of course it can affect the case on issues of legality.
I understand that, Suleiman Bhai, the matters are sub judice. But do we know how many people have been charged by any chance? And do we know what their faiths are, for example?
Well, we know that there is between 20 to 30 people, even more now, but still an ongoing investigation. The police will have to go through thousands of hours of closed-circuit TV, the body cam the police officers wear, and try to identify the people. So I'm sure this is going to go on for a few more months before more arrests, and I'm sure more arrests will be made.
Right, right. I mean, I understand that. I mean, I met your chief constable the other week when we met together, and he was extremely concerned about it. And he actually asked me, because I chair, the deputy chair of the government's hate crime advisory group, so he wanted some advice and guidance from us. And I know he spoke to the chair of the National Police Chiefs Council on some of these issues as well, who, by the way, for my viewers, will be on my program next week. He'll be coming over from Ireland when I can talk to him about hate crime, and particularly Islamophobia and the rise of Islamophobia and what the police chiefs are doing, particularly in light of the government's sort of policy at the moment, where they are actually working against what the police are doing. I will also have the PCC, the Police and Crime Commissioner, who is taken on the responsibility of tackling hate crime at the PCC level. So it should be a very interesting program next week. But coming back, Suleiman Bhai, obviously these incidents have been very concerning, particularly to the Muslim community, who I remember in the 70s, as you said, we had the National Front, and they used to come into our towns and terrorize people in those days. We had a number of incidents in West Yorkshire, both in Bradford and Dewsbury and other parts of the country as well. And we felt under siege at that time. And we felt that the authorities were actually siding more with them than they were with us. Do you feel that the Muslim community feels in the same way? Because I've heard people saying that, rather than protecting us, the police were protecting those who were marching. Is that the sentiment that many of the people in Leicester feel?
Well, yes, obviously that is a sentiment that they feel. But again, with all of these debates, Baba, you need to understand, depends who you ask and through what lens they're looking at it. So without being what we call the devil's advocate, I'm sure if you had somebody from the Hindi community, they likewise would also have their stories to tell, as we have ours to tell as well. So we need to be mindful that sometimes there's different approaches to these things. But certainly, if you ask me, how does the Muslim community feel? They feel that they're under siege. They're a community that's been picked on, have always been picked on for the last 2 decades or even longer. And they feel that legislation is not there to protect them. As we have quite rightly so, laws to protect, example, the Jewish community, anti-Semitic. Why can't we have laws to protect the Muslim community? And Islamophobia is rife in this country. So there are many underlying conditions. So if the Muslim community feel as part of the narrative that they've been picked on by possibly the establishment or people outside, then I have no reason to believe that they have anything else but to accept that, because of the way legislation, draconian laws have come out usually holding the whole Muslim accountable. So when you have example an attack by a handful of Muslim, then you put the whole community in the dock to be answerable. And we are the only community where there's a collective responsibility placed upon us. So certainly as a Muslim community, we have a unique problem. And the problem is that we are not subject to the same sort of protection on the law, or we feel we are not, compared to other communities. And I think that needs to be changed.
But I mean, I understand that, and we know we have the press and the media, which is also very anti-Islam, anti-Muslim in this country as well, and that is a massive task. I mean, when I was on the government's advisory group on anti-Muslim hate crime, we tried to meet with the Society of Editors, who are responsible for the editorial processes of this country's press, but they refused to meet us. This is a government body that we never got the chance to, and the ability to meet them. I mean, that is a huge task in itself. But in terms of your work as the Federation of Muslim Organizations and working on interfaith, how strong did you feel that structure helped you, or did you feel that it did not help you in this particular situation that the Muslim community found itself in?
Well, in most people's cases, I think it was firefighting. The contacts were made only at a time when this unfortunate incident took place. For us with the Federation, for over 3 decades or longer, we've been immersed in interfaith work. So we already had the connections and the good relations with people from right across the different faith communities. So we had that slight advantage where you just picked up the phone and spoke to individuals. The problem, that we need to look at the situation is, how do we as Muslims respond? Now, without going very deep into the situation, we are in a country where we are in the minority, and therefore we have many other challenges that we are facing. And so in proportion wise, we have to respond accordingly. Having said that, the response here would be different to, say, a response in another part of the world. The Muslim community is not just one community. We are communities of communities.
Oh,
we
yes,
come
it's
from
not
different
homogeneous.
parts.
It's not
Exactly.
a homogeneous community,
Exactly. We come from different parts of the world, different journeys, different subjects that affect us. So, example, for those that are from the settled community may have a certain view if they're connected to the Asian subcontinent, but those that come from, example, North Africa or the Middle East or other parts of the world, some of these things don't quite make sense because they're caught up with politics in their part of the world. And this is part and parcel of the problem, that as one community, we, each and every one of us, carries a certain story in relation to where we're coming from. So as an example, if you came from a war-torn country, then you'd be traumatized. And if you see something like this, it would be absolutely terrifying, thinking that we have come to this country and I'd be a lot safer here than where I was in my part of the world. So we need to understand it from those terms. So not every Muslim will think about it identically, to say that a person from India, a person from Africa, a person from the Far East, etc., would look at the situation the same. They would look at it differently.
Yeah, I mean, I understand, people come from different parts of the country and different journeys, and, have different sort of upbringings and different philosophies and ideologies, etc. But now we are living in the UK, and that's something that we have to be aware of and build that into our psyche. Unfortunately, Sulaiman, we are coming to the end of the program. Unfortunately, and I always say this, as we're getting into the system and the debate, we come to the end of the program. And actually, it's very important what Sulaiman just said. I think we need to start to understand that we need to disassociate ourselves with some of those sort of ties that we've had in the past, and we need to refocus ourselves as one homogeneous Muslim community. Now, I know it's not an easy task. It's going to be very difficult. Some communities have been able to do it. As I say, in Bradford, we have the Bradford Council of Mosque. In Leicester, you have the Muslim Federation, Federation of Muslim Organizations. And unless we build that network and that strength within the Muslim community, unfortunately, I feel that we're going to constantly suffer these type of incidents and this type of hate, and we will constantly be under the scrutiny of those organizations who clearly have a dislike for us. I'm sorry we're running out of time. We need to think about this. Inshallah, we'll come back soon to you. Next week, as I say, we'll be talking about hate crime, particularly Islamophobia, and what the police service and others are going to be doing about it. In the meantime, take care. May Allah be with you. Please make du'as for me and the Muslim Ummah as well. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.